lovers and stationery enthusiasts, it's Christy here, Snarky Wordsworth over on Instagram and Reddit, and today I am starting what will hopefully be a fun little series of videos all about small, fountain pen friendly budget notebooks. So today's episode is all about the Pen and Gear brand from Walmart. I was not at all familiar with this brand before I'd watched a video from the fantastic Seaweed Kisses. I will link to her video below. And she was talking all about this particular notebook. Now, as mentioned, I had no experience with Walmart's paper as far as the notebooks go prior to this. I'm definitely a bit of a Tomoe River paper snob. I don't care if we're talking about the original Tomoe River paper, we're talking about Tomoe River S, we're talking about Sanzen. I just love that particular kind of paper. And I've tried loads and loads of notebooks, but that is just my go-to. That said, sometimes you really just want a knockabout notebook. You want something that you're not going to have to worry will get, dinged if you fling it into your bag. If the notebook gets wet, if it gets dirty, it's not a big deal. And, sometimes it's really hard to find budget paper that doesn't essentially disintegrate under fountain pen ink. This little notebook, man, the paper in this thing is quite impressive. So as mentioned, this is the book that Seaweed Kisses recommended to people. It is obviously a little spiral bound memo book. This has narrow ruled spacing on 80 sheets. It's 4 inches by 6 inches. If you're more used to a European or Asian standard measurement, this is very nearly an A6. A6 would be 4.1 by 5.8. So again, very, very close in size. And this is the paper that is manufactured in India. Remember that. Pen and Gear paper can also be manufactured in the US, Colombia, and Vietnam. Those are the 3 other countries I've noticed. This is far and away my favorite of those papers. The US paper tends to feather, at least in my experience while I was trying out both the notebooks and just like copy paper. That was my biggest concern, is that it feathered a lot and with many different kinds of inks. Whereas this paper, it really is very well behaved. Let's see if I can show you some examples. As I mentioned, this has been my favorite. It does not feather. It does not bleed through. There's very little ghosting, and it's still quite thin. I mean, we're not suddenly dealing with a thicker, more absorbent paper. The only time I ever got any bleed through is on this page on the opposite side. I ended up getting this page wet. Well, that's my fault. And it does have a tiny bit of bleed through here, again, because I got the page wet. I was not looking for a watercolor friendly paper, so I don't really care about this. But that's the only time I've really seen significant bleed through at all. And it just does a very good job. I don't know if it's showing up well, but you can even see a little bit of shading. Now, is it the same as, say, a Tomoe River paper or a Cosmo Air? No, but this book in particular was 97 cents pre-tax. That, my friends, is ridiculous. I have several other far more expensive notebooks that cannot boost a lack of bleeding, a lack of feathering, a lack of ghosting. I mean, this paper is kind of a miracle. I'm honestly shocked. Now, again, for a 97-cent notebook, this is excellent. And I would definitely recommend it to pretty much anyone who's looking for a cheap little notebook that you can just toss wherever. I do, however, have 2 major issues with it. One is the fact that I know for me, this spiral binding is going to get dinged and bent in such a way that will prevent me from comfortably using the notebook almost immediately. I don't know what it is with me and spiral bound anything, but it's just a bad idea. Once the rings start to get bent, then you're not going to have this nice, easy sliding experience where it totally folds out flat easily. You're going to have to play with it and manipulate it. The other thing is, I in general hate a spiral binding because I don't like the writing experience. As much as I love this paper, I don't see myself using this notebook for long periods of time. Certainly not for long bits of writing. On this side of the page, on the right side, you know, it's comfortable because you're not bumping your hand against a spiral, you're just writing. But on this backside, despite the fact that it doesn't bleed or ghost, I'm not ever going to use it because I hate this. My little hand is like already annoyed by the fact that it's running across metal. Even if I flip it, it doesn't alleviate that problem. So I would end up solely using this side of the notebook for the most part. And that's kind of defeating the purpose, you know? I mean, I wanted a paper that I could write on both sides and not have any problems. Well, if I'm not going to do that anyway, simply because of the binding, it's not really a win. So for me, this was definitely not the grail that I had hoped, but I do think it could be for a lot of people. Again, A6 size. I knew I loved that aspect of it. I just needed to find something that would work a little bit better for me. So from there, I moved on to this little guy. This little guy comes in a pack of 3. It is 3 1/4 by 4.5 inches. That's kind of close to A7. A7 is 2.9 inches by 4.1. So this is definitely larger, but kind of comparable. I do like that it's a little bit larger so that if I want a longer note, like you can see here, there's no problem. Again, we're strictly sticking with that made in India paper. So you do, again, get a little bit of that shading. This is Fuyu Syogun from Pilot Iroshizuku, which is one of my favorite gray inks. And you do see shading. You absolutely do. And you don't see very much ghosting. You don't see very much bleed through. I think the only time I saw bleed through was a little bit, and I used like the bold nib on my Benu Euphoria, which is a gusher of a pen. And then also I used the Tatcha Golden Wheat, which is an incredibly wet ink. And I saw a little bit of bleed through there, but that's the only real time. Like, and I used that specific ink, that specific pen, because I wanted to see just how far I could push it. Apparently that's a little too far, but I don't often use that ink and pen combo. So really, it's not really very much of a problem or a concern for me. I would be concerned on using that for loads of notebooks that are way pricier than that. And this one, again, is like super affordable. A pack of 3 costs $1, so you're looking at 33 cents a book. I mean, that's crazy. 33 cents for paper that doesn't really ghost, doesn't really bleed, doesn't feather, and definitely shows off shading. That's nothing but a win. Also, since it's a stitched binding, it's pretty easy for it to lay flat. You don't have that spiral binding, so, you know, no problem there. I don't have to worry about my hand. The writing experience is really nice. It's just that A7 size is a little bit small, but if you just wanted something that you jot quick notes, like a shopping list or whatever, this is like perfect size for that. Definitely will fit in your pocket. It fits on my hand, and I don't have large hands. I have small hands, so it is a very tiny book that is very conveniently transportable. But if this is a little too small, this one is another option. So this notebook comes in a pack of 2. It ends up being around 87 cents, 86, 87 cents pre-tax when you divide it down. And then this is 5 by 7 inches, which is pretty close to a B6. The B6 would be 4.9 by 6.9, so it's a 1/10 of an inch larger on all around. And it's the exact same paper. Great writing experience, a fairly sizable page, loads of space for notes. You can very comfortably write on both sides. Very little ghosting, no bleed through. It's an excellent, excellent notebook. B6 is bordering on too big for me to consider a small notebook, but I really loved that the aspect of having something a little bit larger than that teeny tiny one without a spiral. The other thing that's really nice about this is that it has perforated edges, so if you just wanted to rip a page out, you easily can without damaging the binding. And since this, again, is a stitched binding, folds out flat super easily. One characteristic that could be a pro or a con for people is that it's one of those poly covers. So waterproof, really sturdy. You're not going to have to worry about it bending. But if you're somebody who likes to decorate covers, poly is hard to get stuff to stick onto. So, you know, there is that. That said, I really do love the paper in this so much that I don't really think that I'd mind. Since this one does come in black, you can get it in other colors as well. I don't even feel like desperate need to be able to customize the outside of it that much. Now, if we're going to talk about really specific characteristics that are showing off, let's see, I did do a little comparison page. Now, this is Tomoe River paper. As I said, my favorite go-to paper. Shows off the characteristics of ink so beautifully. It's like the perfect paper, in my opinion. And this is from my Pilot Vanishing Point, the matte black stub nib. I'm using the Pilot Iroshizuku Kujaku in here, which I think is a gorgeous blue, but does have a tendency to be, you know, to ghost through a lot of things. And it doesn't, and it obviously it does not in the Tomoe River. But here you can see all of the beautiful characteristics. There's so much shading. You can see a little bit of sheen along the edges of the lettering where ink kind of ended up pulling together. There's no feathering. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ink. Here on the super budget paper, again, this notebook is less than $1. You still get a little bit of shading. It's not as, you know, pointed as it is on the Tomoe River. But for less than $1, that's crazy solid. There is no feathering whatsoever. And a lot of times for those bold sort of blues and teals, you'll seek feathering. There's no bleed through. There's not even any ghosting. I mean, I would not consider anything ghosting on this page. And it still shows off the color. I mean, sometimes you'll get like the really cheapy papers that sort of soak in the color and kind of muddy it so that it doesn't even, you don't even really get a true sense of what the shade is. But this still looks like that beautiful, you know, peacock blue teal. And I just honestly can't get over how well this paper holds up. I've used a variety of different inks on it, and I've felt pretty much the same way with every single ink, no matter what we're talking about. A lighter color, darker color, ones that are prone to feathering, ones that are, you know, they have specific characteristics that I want to show off, like my Fuyu Syogun. You know, I still get to see shading. I still get to see a little tiny bit of sheen. The sheen does not show up on this nearly as much as it does in the Tomoe River, nor does the shading, but you still get both aspects. I, again, have had many expensive notebooks that don't do that or don't do that well. That feather with this particular ink. So yeah, I can't get over these. So if you are in the market for a budget notebook, I really would say that Walmart's Pen and Gear brand is certainly one to look at. When you make sure that you have that made in India manufacturing, it's just such an excellent, excellent paper. Really great, great examples of how well budget notebooks can work with fountain pen inks. And I would strongly recommend trying out any of these ones. The only Indian manufactured paper that I did not pick up would be a steno book. Just for whatever reason, I never consider more vertical notebooks when I think about my knockabout notebooks, just because I just like the book style. But there is one steno pad that has this exact same paper that, if that's your preference, they do have that. It is also $1 or less. So loads and loads of options. Okay, if you have stuck around to the end of this video, you are absolutely awesome. If it has been in any way helpful, entertaining, you know, useful, eye-opening, please do consider clicking that like button, or maybe even the subscription button. If you have any comments about this kind of paper or other papers that you have used with the Pen and Gear line, please, please, please share those below. I definitely would like to hear other people's experiences with this paper, with different inks, because, you know, the more we know about different inks and how this paper handles it, the better, you know, the experience for everybody. So with that, as always, thank you so, so much for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye-bye.